What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. David's not here this week. If you were listening last week, he's off this week, so I'm riding solo. But we still got a lot to talk about. The Dolphins are in the third and final phase of their offseason workout program, organized team activities, OTAs. Those are underway. And the Dolphins had their first open practice to the media on Tuesday. So we got our first real look at the 2023 Miami Dolphins, their entire 90-man roster, or the overwhelming majority of that 90-man roster in attendance at the Baptist Health Training Complex for a roughly 90-minute session. We're going to get into that as well as some comments from Mike McDaniel, who spoke before. And then we got to hear from some players afterward. But I'm going to start with the offense. I'm going to break it down to the offense in the first half. We're going to take a short break, and then I'm going to give some thoughts on the defense. Now, I know a lot of people, a lot of fans were asking, based off of some videos that the team had posted in recent days, who's there, who's not. I don't want to make too much of a big deal about that because, again, these are voluntary. They're not mandatory until a mandatory minicamp. But there were kind of some notable absences or guys just not participating. And I'm going to go just briefly into some of those because there's some guys who were some veterans who were just not there, as well as some guys who were dealing with some injuries from last season. And it was good to see them. And we got a little bit of update on them. But starting with the offense, Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead, two guys, two vets who weren't there. Not a big surprise, but also not a big deal. They've put in the work for several years. They're there when it matters and when it counts. But I think it was also a good opportunity for some of the younger guys, some of the improving guys to get some reps as well. Going into the standouts on offense, I think it was a real big day for rookie running back Devon Achane, the team's third round pick. Written about him a lot, a player that Mike McDaniel, who loves speed. He really coveted Devon Achane in the draft process, and he made a great first impression. He was extremely active in the passing game, catching a lot of passes. He actually got behind a defender for a long pass from Tua, I believe, during some team drill work. And he, like I said, he made a really good impression. I mean, the speed is there. I mean, you see it in the way that he can cut, the way he can separate from defenders. And from the moment the Dolphins picked him, I didn't think of this pick as like just picking a running back in a vacuum. He was a guy who was an impact runner, receiver, as well as return specialist. So I think that, as I've said before, I think Mike McDaniel is going to create a lot of really innovative and cool ways and unique ways to get him the ball, surrounded by guys like Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, and also all the other running backs on the team, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, and others. Moving on to Tua, I know everyone wants to talk about Tua. How's Tua doing? How is he looking? And obviously, there's a little bit of extra intrigue for him because this is his first team drill work since his season effectively ended last year because of that second concussion. I thought Tua looked fine. Obviously, they're dividing up the reps between him as well as the other three quarterbacks on the roster, Mike White, Skylar Thompson, as well as James Blackman, the undrafted rookie. So it's not like Tua got a ton of reps, but I thought he looked good. I thought he moved well, moved around the pocket, out of the pocket well. He connected with Jaylen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, as well as Eric Ezukama on some nice passes over the middle of the field. But it's clear just from looking at his physique that it's definitely apparent that he put in the work in terms of lifting weights, excuse me, trying to just get bigger. I mean, that's something that he mentioned at his luau event. As luau event and later in his first news conference with reporters that a big point of emphasis for him was, being able to sustain the rigors of a 17-game schedule and potentially longer. He knows the injury concerns. He's heard it. He's aware that, he hasn't remained healthy for an entire season. And it's good. And again, it's clear that he put on a lot of mass and a lot of weight and a lot of muscle in order to, maybe sustain some of those hits well. It was also interesting to hear some of Mike McDaniel's comments prior to practice when he was asked about how Tua has looked in the offseason workout program, as well as the benefits of the jiu-jitsu. And McDaniel kind of dropped the interesting nugget that, some of the stuff that Tua is doing in jiu-jitsu in terms of training is being incorporated into the quarterback drills. And I thought that was really interesting because he mentioned how, Teddy Bridgewater, who was on the team last year, he mentioned himself that, for quarterbacks, it's kind of a unique space, like kind of getting ingratiating, getting back into the swing of things in terms of football, because all throughout offseason workout programs, all throughout training camp, and really until you get to the preseason or regular season, they're not taking hits. They have the red non-contact jerseys. Teams aren't going full throttle, full tackle to the ground much anyway in training camp, but still there's a lot more contact for every other non-quarterback. So really the first time a quarterback is hit, quarterbacks are even playing less, starting quarterbacks are playing less in preseason as well. So the first time they're really taking live hits is in the regular season. So with that in mind, McDaniel had mentioned that the team is incorporating some of Tua's kind of jiu-jitsu training in the quarterback drill so they can prepare to brace for those hits and, disperse their energy, some of the things that Tua had mentioned as well. So I found that really interesting because it's, the jiu-jitsu kind of tenets, they're not just being applied to Tua, they're being applied to all the quarterbacks. So that's interesting as well. Again, I think that with Tyreek Hill, not, he wasn't present at OTAs, not a big deal, but I thought that was an opportunity for some of the unproven guys, some of the younger guys, some of the guys who were competing for spots behind him and Jaylen Waddle to step up. And I thought it was a really good day. Eric Ezukama, Cedric Wilson, Braxton Berrios, Robbie Chosen, formerly Chosen Anderson, Robbie Anderson. I thought all those guys, stepped up with some nice plays over the middle of the field. Eric Ezukama had a really nice sideline grab. I'm blanking on the quarterback. But he, it's a big year for him because, he was a standout during these offseason workouts and training camp as well. But, kind of struggled as a rookie to learn some new positions that they put him in. Seems like he has all the physical tools, but maybe it's a matter of, just mastering what was really a new scheme for him and kind of just overall a new experience as a wide receiver. He talked about how in college, he's going from, signals and signs, and then you go to the NFL where there's, wordy play calls. And, again, he has to learn multiple positions. And, maybe there was a little bit of, a learning curve there for him. But I thought he had a really good first open practice to the media. And again, it's a good sign that, Tyreek Hill isn't there, but, it's not only Jaylen Waddle that's making plays. Cedric Wilson, who's obviously been kind of speculated as a potential trade target, as well as others are stepping up. Because again, Trent Sherfield left the free agency, Mike Gesicki left the free agency. They may have been the third and fourth options, but that's 100 targets that this team has to replace through somebody. I mean, obviously Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle might take some of those targets as well, but they're going to need some other guys to step up. So that was a good sign. And the last thing from the offensive side of the ball from this first OTA practice and the availabilities was some comments from Austin Jackson that kind of stood out to me and were kind of interesting. First off, he revealed that he actually underwent reconstructive surgery on his right ankle after he dealt with some high ankle sprains or some ankle sprains that essentially limited him to just 2 games, and not even 2 games because he didn't make it through a full game either time he played this past season. Obviously, it was very frustrating for him, very frustrating for the team because they had really high hopes for him entering, this new zone running scheme. Under Mike McDaniel, the word about this scheme heading into offseason workouts and training camp was like the zone run scheme, is one that benefits from or is at its best when it can be married with athletic offensive linemen. So in that regard, it was kind of seeing that, all right, moving the right tackle for Austin Jackson, that's going to be a perfect fit for him. And truthfully, I thought that he was fine in training camps and preseason. I didn't think that there was, I didn't leave, preseason and training camp thinking, all right, they're going to be in trouble or, he's regressed. I thought that he actually showed improvements, but obviously it didn't really pan out and he wasn't able to put a lot of stuff on tape this past season with those 2 injuries. He had 2 stints on IR and the second time replaced on IR. NFL rules say that you have to be out for the rest of the season. So again, just 2 games for him. So he talked a lot about it. I thought he was very forthcoming and very honest and very insightful about how it was a struggle, when you put in all the work, the previous offseason, and then you get to the season and then you get hurt and you're not able to put good tape or good film on tape or really any film on tape. That's frustrating. And now the team has declined his 5th-year option. They signed some veteran offensive tackles who may or may not kind of push for a starting spot. He was very forthcoming that hey, I've got to be better. But he said that um, through the reconstructive surgery and the timeout and the time rehabbing, he's able to really strengthen his ankle, and not only strengthen his ankle, but bring some consistency to his routine, his preparation. He looks like he's in good shape. He's obviously still a very athletic player, just 23 years old. So we've talked about a lot on the podcast, like the Dolphins season really may come down to more or less two things, like the decision to stick with not only Austin Jackson at right tackle and Chris Gerson. The expectation is that he'll be the starting right tackle. So sticking with him at right tackle, Liam Eichenberg at left guard. Um, but also, what happens with Tua's health, and obviously that's kind of linked to the play and the performance of the offensive line. So this is really it. I mean, Austin Jackson made it clear. It's he went into what was essentially in a contract year because he could have been extended after this previous. He could have been extended this offseason. He went into it, not having a lot of film because he was hurt in his third year. The options declined, so now it's a contract year for him as well. And it's crunch time. So again, I don't want to make too much of the first OTA practice open to reporters, especially when it's not full contact. You're not getting a lot of you don't want to make big judgments, especially on offensive line play from one offseason workout practice. But it is a big year, a big set of practices for him to get back into the groove. He has another new offensive line coach with Butch Berry, who he was very complimentary of. But nonetheless, it's a big year. I mean, just think of the strides the Dolphins can make if they get good to very good offensive line play. I mean, with what I think the offensive line made strides, especially with Ron Armstead, Connor Williams, Rob Hunt. But just imagine how good this offense could be if they get quality starting level play from Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg. With the bevy of pass catchers and skill position players they have. I think that there's significant room for improvement, and Mike McDaniel alluded to that as well. Like for all the things that they did well, there's so many more things that they can improve on to really be consistent. And Jaylen Waddle said that as well. Like they found a groove in the offseason, or excuse me, they found a groove in the middle of last season, and they kind of lost it, amid that, I believe it was 4-game losing streak or whatever it was. So, I think the offensive line continuity can contribute to that. But it's not just about health. It's about like performance when you're healthy. And I think it's, Austin Jackson is very aware of that. So yeah, I mean, offense. I think that I'd probably say the defense got the better of the offense in the first open practice. I'll get to the defense in the second half. But it was good to see Tua back out there, kind of starting to get into its groove. It was good to see some of the wide receivers, step up. With Tyreek Hill not participating, and then obviously, as I said at the top, Devon Achane, I think he was probably the standout, just in the way he was able to make an impact in the passing game. I think that's something to watch out for. His training camp starts late July in the preseason, and obviously eventually into the regular season. All right, we're gonna take a short break, but when we get back on the other side of things, how did Vic Fangio's defense look going up against Tua in that offense? And some updates on some players who missed the 2022 season with injuries. Mike McDaniel spoke on that. So we're going to get into all that and more. Stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast, talking all things Dolphins. Now, the first half, I broke down my thoughts, breakdown, recap of the offensive side of the ball from the first OTA practice, open to reporters. Second half, I'm against the defense. And obviously, there's a lot of intrigue in that unit because they're undergoing a deep philosophical change with new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. So this is the first time we got to see what Vic Fangio's defense may look like. And again, OTAs, maybe not every veteran participating or fully active in team drills, but still you get a sense of some of the core tenets and some of the things that Vic Fangio might want to incorporate. My first thoughts, leaving the practice was that, it's a defense that's going to make you work for everything. We know about the talent and every level of the unit. But I think that just with the philosophical change, from, zero blitz, a lot of blitzing to a more conservative effort. Just overall, it's a defense that's built to make you work for everything. I think that they forced a lot of dump offs. The offense did have its moments where they were able to kind of attack parts of the middle of the field and whatnot. But you didn't see too many deep passes going over the heads of defenders. Again, a lot of dump offs, a lot of stuff to the flats, a lot of short checkdowns, where the offense really has to force its way or work its way down the field. So I think that's going to be definitely a welcome change for the Dolphins defense. A really good day for the defensive front as well. I thought that they got a lot of pressure on the Dolphins quarterbacks. Now, obviously, you kind of can do the reverse, the inverse, and say, well, maybe it's not a great day for the offensive line. I'd rather just chalk it up and give credit where credit is due. I thought that a lot of plays. I know Jalen Twyman was involved in some plays, and really, I think it was a great effort because Zach Sealer wasn't wasn't at practice today or participating in team drills. So not having one of your kind of starters, Emmanuel Agbo working his way back. He was in team drills and participating after he was cleared from the torn triceps. But overall, just a lot of depth on the defensive line. Obviously, there's still some questions about what they're going to do at the backup nose tackle spot behind Raekwon Davis. But again, early impressions, first day. I thought it was a really good day for that defensive front. A lot of guys kind of converging on the quarterback for what would be sacks or quote unquote sacks, as well as it's kind of tough to say what is not an explosive run play. But I definitely saw a lot of run stops, a lot of getting to the ball carrier early before they got to the second and third level of the defense, which is really good to see, especially this early on in off-season workouts and OTAs and whatnot. Obviously, again, on the offense, on the offensive side of the ball, some veterans not participating. Same thing for the defense. Jalen Ramsey was in, some individual drills and whatnot, but not participating in team drills. So we didn't get to see him there. Xavier Howard, however, was. Didn't see too much of new safety Deshaun Elliott in team drills, as well as David Long. He may have been in a couple of plays, but didn't see him much. But update on some injured players who sustained severe injuries last season. Are working their way back. Mike McDaniel was asked about Nick Needham, Brandon Jones, as well as Trill Williams. And he didn't divulge too much, but said, hey, I think the one thing that the team wants to do is take their time with those guys, make sure that they're on track or ahead of schedule. And he said that's the case for all those guys. Now, I know Nick Needham, Brandon Jones, and Trill Williams all sustained injuries at different points of the season. Trill Williams was torn ACL in the preseason opener. I believe he had said at locker room cleanout that he should be ready for OTAs, but the team's being very cautious, and they're usually very cautious with all their guys coming back from injuries. He said he probably won't participate or be a full go until training camp in late July. Didn't see him at OTAs today. We did see Nick Needham and Brandon Jones at practice, but not in team drills. Needham, obviously, with the torn Achilles, I believe that was in October. Brandon Jones, I believe the week prior, tearing his ACL, but no brace for Brandon Jones. Both of them out at practice, which is great. Obviously, those guys have been integral parts of the defense, and specifically the secondary in recent years. So they can get that back with the addition of Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard coming back, and maybe hopefully getting back to form. Javon Holland. You got the makings of a really, really talented, but not only talented, but deep secondary as well. So we'll see how those guys progress over the coming weeks, whether they work their way back at some point during OTAs or mandatory minicamp over the next 2 weeks, or whether we got to wait to see them in training camp. I thought it was a good day for Javon Holland. Mentioned before, he had an interception on Mike White. That's always good to see. If you're the defense, again, you can play it conversely and say, don't want to see that from your potential backup quarterback. But I think that's one of the things that Javon Holland was talking about when he spoke to reporters a couple of weeks back on a Zoom call. So he doesn't want to leave money out there. He doesn't want to leave food out there. I think he's had a very good 2 years. Start to his career. I think he'll maybe have more of a defined role with Vic Fangio. But I think the big thing is for him is like that play-to-play consistency and then making those splash plays. Like we saw that a lot as a rookie when he was able to blitz, be near the line of scrimmage. But now in this scheme, I think there's a real opportunity for him to be a real playmaker at the back end. This Vic Fangio scheme is one that has brought out the best in a lot of safeties. It's produced a lot of Pro Bowl safeties. Most recently Justin Simmons with the Broncos. And I think Javon Holland can find himself in a similar role. So it's obviously great to see him, start out first open practice, get his hands on the ball, turn the ball over. I think that's key for the Dolphins because I think that they ranked second to last in takeaways. Those turnovers can be kind of volatile. For a couple of years, the Dolphins, when they were really, really good on defense, they were forcing a lot of turnovers. Last year, they weren't as good on defense, and they barely were forcing turnovers. But again, I think that the way Vic Fangio's defense is set up, kind of forcing it. It's interesting because I think that it kind of forces offenses to really, really grind their way down the field, limit the explosive plays. And sometimes, if you're a quarterback, if you're offense, you can get kind of, impatient. You can force something, and that's where there's an opportunity to make plays. And I think Javon Holland's going to spend a lot of time in the back end of the secondary where he can kind of patrol and kind of make jumps, jump on routes and with his eyes on the quarterback and make a lot of plays. So overall, good day from him as well. I thought Cam Smith, the rookie cornerback, he made a good play on the ball as well. I know one of the things that he said Fangio has spoken to him about is making sure that he's keeping his hands to himself, maybe not too physical and drawing those defensive pass interference penalties, holding penalties. I thought he had a solid practice as well. Before we head out, one of the more interesting notes, things to monitor. I know that normally we're not allowed to report where guys are practicing in certain spots. However, previous day there was a report, and our own Barry Jackson as well added to it, that Andrew Van Ginkel is expected to play some inside linebacker and kind of nickel sub package situations. McDaniel was asked about that as well, and it more or less confirmed it, while adding some kind of clarity to that decision. And he said, "Hey, it's something that it's something that he believes creates confusion for the defense, or excuse me, for the offense, in terms of identifying who's who and what players are taking on certain roles, and also allow some flexibility with them on game day because you have a guy who can kind of cross train and play multiple positions. Versatility is key for the Dolphins, whether it's offense or defense. So that's something that will benefit them. Andrew Van Ginkel was asked about that after practice when he spoke to reporters, and he said it's something that teams have always wondered: can he not only play outside linebacker but kind of move inside? And it's something that Fangio reached out to him and thought that he could do when he watched film of him and kind of spoke to him and was part of the process in bringing him back to Miami and re-signing to the team. I think Andrew Van Ginkel is I think he's a very good athlete. Obviously plays with a very high loner. I think he sifts through the traffic really well, working on the edge. And I think that there's a possibility for him to do that as well, an inside linebacker, as well as rush the passer from the inside linebacker position. Obviously, they signed David Long Jr. To kind of be the running mate for with Jerome Baker. But maybe not a ton of depth behind that. You have Duke Riley, and then you have Channing Tindall, who's still trying to come along after not playing much in his rookie season. So again, it's going to be, from the jump, I've said, this is going to be a defense that's predicated on its versatility. Jalen Ramsey has taken on a versatile role the past couple of years with the Rams, playing outside, playing corner, even playing a little bit of safety. And he said himself, like, I'm not a cornerback, I'm a defensive back. There's a lot of intrigue there. Obviously now we know Andrew Van Ginkel is going to be playing inside linebacker a little bit more, spending some time kind of practicing there. Emmanuel Ogbah said he thinks he's going to be all over the defensive line. So I think, this defense is based on deception, pre and post snap, and making sure that what offenses see before they snap the ball is not what they see after they snap the ball. Because when you think you're confident in what you see, and then your eyes deceive you, that's when you can be kind of prone to mistakes. That's what this defense is going to be predicated on. So if you can get Andrew Van Ginkel, who's moving around from outside linebacker to inside linebacker, kind of messes up what you've kind of been, what you kind of taught yourself. And again, when your eyes kind of deceive you, you can be susceptible to some turnovers, some mistakes. And the Dolphins definitely need that on defense in 2023 if they're going to kind of bounce back from what was an underwhelming year. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast, breaking down first OTA practice open to reporters, comments from Mike McDaniel as well as other players. We have a bunch of stories on that, news, nuggets, observations, as well as my story on Austin Jackson and his mindset going into a pivotal 2023 season. So definitely check that out. As always, subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. I'll be back next week. Dolphins are keeping having one practice open to reporters, open to media a week. So we don't get back to the back and stuff training complex until next Wednesday. But we'll be back to recap all of that, as well as any other Dolphins news that pops up, because you know how the Dolphins are. Just keeping me busy and keeping the reporters down here busy. But until then, you guys take care. See you.